All right, guys, you with me? You guys stick around? Let me know. Type something in the chat if you're with me. All right. Guys, guys, I am so sorry about the technical difficulties. You never know what's going to happen with this old mic here. Jeb said y'all are paying for the sponsor money's paying for the new mic. We'll get there. We'll get there eventually. That's priority one. Thank you guys for sticking around. Colin Fleming, Noble Guy, Rolly, Kit Kat, Jeb, Matt Myers, everybody who's in here, Rangers King. Thank you guys for sticking around. We got through the bump, and now we're going to start the stream. It's been 2 weeks, and we're back with a dud, but that's okay. Thank you guys for being here. So today, I wanted to talk about the Aggie offense. I had this little project of my own that I was going to go look at all the Connor Wigman snaps, every snap he's taken as a Texas A&M Aggie. And in doing so, I learned a lot about Connor. I guess I was refreshed about Connor Wigman. A lot of stuff to be excited about. But I also got a better feel for the offense over the last couple of years, and I've come to a couple of exciting realizations that might make us feel a bit more hope going into next year. Yes, this is a hopium stream. We're sipping on it tonight. I've talked about some negatives. We know the potential negatives. We have a new coaching staff. The season starts really fast. But I found some reasons for hope with this offense. Of course we know there are weapons out there. Of course we know there are some good pieces. I want to elaborate on some of that, as well as talk about Connor and some of his strengths and maybe some things he hopefully has worked on since we last saw him play. So I started at the end of 2022, and then we went into the beginning of 2023, went through all that stuff, and I have some results for you guys. But first, we have to cover the latest in the world of college football, and that is with the latest lawsuit update coming from House versus NCAA. So you guys know that I am not super into this stuff. This is not my realm. I am a big Saturdays in the Fall guy. I spend 90% of my time on this YouTube channel talking about the team, talking about what to expect in the next game, the next season, talking about the here and now. I get into recruiting close to signing day, but I don't follow the ins and outs of recruiting throughout the offseason. I leave that for the insiders. I like to talk about the team. But in this case, the latest case is so significant to the trajectory of college football going forward that I could not help but bring it up tonight. So the lawsuit, House versus NCAA. The NCAA was being sued for a antitrust lawsuit because players were withheld from earning money for their name, image, and likeness over the last few years. They reached a settlement that was signed off by the 5 Power 5 conferences today, as of like a couple hours ago, maybe an hour ago at most, that results in players receiving revenue share over the next 10 years. And this goes backwards in time. Players dating back from 2016 are going to receive compensation for being withheld money for their name, image, and likeness, as well as current players going forward over the next 10 years at least. So that's one aspect of this whole thing. The other aspect is that the NCAA owes $2.77 billion. The settlement got this number down from $4 billion, crazy numbers, to $2.77 billion that now needs to be ponied up over the next 10 years. So this is very significant because the NCAA cannot pay that entire sum. They're going to pay 40% of this $2.77 billion. The other 60% is going to come from the teams. Now, the biggest chunk will come from the biggest teams, the Power 5. I'm still saying Power 5 because we technically still have the Pac-12 in its previous year's existence up until July. So right now, everything that's going on is the Power 5. So what's going to happen is the biggest conferences will pay the biggest chunk of money. The G5 will pay a little bit less. FCS will pay less. Division II will pay less, so on and so forth. This is a very significant aspect, in my opinion, going forward, because this leans towards the shrinking of the college football pool of teams, in my opinion. I don't know if the small programs are going to survive. I don't know if the less wealthy Power 5 schools are going to survive this. I think that the teams that are wealthy now, successful now, like Texas A&M, are going to be able to absorb this cost going forward. But I think these small schools are going to be cutting sports, and in some cases, maybe just cutting football. So, this is a turning point, in my opinion, going forward for the world of college athletics. We have players receiving revenue share, and this is on top of NIL. NIL is still happening. This is the team, the universities, giving players a split going forward, at least for the next 10 years. And this marks a hurdle that I don't think every school is going to be able to overcome. It's a very big chunk of money these schools are having to pay. 60% of $2.77 billion over the next 10 years. The less wealthy Power 5 schools may have to drop a division or cut sports. We don't know exactly what's going to happen. The non-revenue generating sports, basically sports that aren't football, and in some cases basketball, those are in jeopardy. And you still have Title IX, meaning you have to have an equal amount of female and male sports. So this whole thing is crazy, man. This whole thing is crazy. But I think this was a formality. I think this was bound to happen based on the options the NCAA had in front of them given the lawsuit. So that's where we're at. I can't give you all the little details. I am no expert. I am no lawyer. This is the Cliff Notes. So once we get Max in here, who says he can't hear me in StreamYard, so I need to fix that for him. Let me see if I can do that for you real quick, Max. And by the way, guys, this is a call-in show. Once we get to the Aggie offense stuff, I'm sure some of you guys are going to want to call in and comment on that. But if you want to call in and talk about what's going on in the world of college football, how things are changing quickly now, then yeah, call in and talk about it. Give me your thoughts on this. This is major change. This is the first, not the first, but this is a major domino in the reformation of college football that's going to be taking place over the next 10, 15 years. So yeah, guys, I don't know what the little guys are going to do. And in light of this, I don't think it's a coincidence. Private equity firms have shown up trying to support these smaller schools that don't have the funds that some of the bigger schools do. So maybe some of these schools will opt to do that. Maybe some of the smaller Power 5 schools, the less wealthy Power 5 schools, could opt into this. And they're not putting these schools in debt. They're getting a revenue split going forward in exchange for funds up front. So that's another slippery slope that I guess Max can talk more about. That makes me very nervous. If we have boosters meddling with some of these big school decisions, what are these private equity firms that are really going to care about that bottom line do with some of the schools they have in their grasp? That's my worry with that situation. That's something that's come up over the last couple days as well. So we'll let Max get into that. I'll let you guys digest that. I can't offer much more than that. We move on. Let's say what's up to everybody in the chat, and then let's talk a little bit about this Aggie offense, the stuff that I'm really interested in. Some nice realizations and things that I found after reviewing the last couple years of film. Jeb says, NIL is ruining college football. You're just making players even more greedy. Yeah, man. Why even go pro when you can get paid in college? Exactly. Stay 4 years. You're going to get an insurance plan for injury too. That's there too. So why would you go pro early if you don't have an absolute path at like a first or second round situation? It's a good point. Carson says, have you seen the potential Pac-12? No, but I'm interested in that. Jeb survived a tornado at his house. Just updating you guys. Jeb is okay. Jeb's yard is destroyed, but Jeb's car and house and health are okay. So everybody give it up for Jeb. Jeb went through some crazy times out in Temple, Texas. Shout out to Jeb. Rolly says, I know there's been much talk about adding depth in the receiver room, but one player we fail to recognize as part of the incoming freshman class, other than Bussy, is Ashton Bethel-Roman, 4-star commit. I often forget to mention this guy. Him and Isaiah Williams, Bussy. These guys could all be a factor this coming year. You have 3 guys at the top. You have Cyrus Allen. Then you have Tease. You have a lot of question mark there. We don't know if Tease is ready to contribute right now. We don't know if Cyrus Allen is ready to contribute yet. So we'll have to see what happens there. It's a very good point, and I apologize to Bethel-Roman for not bringing him up more often. Rangers King says, I'd rather players demand every penny than these schools pocket absurd amount of cash and then waste it on spending on facilities to an absurd amount and paying coaches more money than God. Yeah, and you are updating facilities to lure players, really, is like the main factor in updating facilities. I think we're going to see that slow down. I think the priority in that realm is going to become just paying players, right? That's what it's going to change to. So we're glad A&M got some of their work done early. We've got to be happy about that because the facilities are set now. And it's no coincidence that just a couple months ago, or maybe a month ago, Trev Alberts laid off several employees in the athletic department to make way for this new money line, these new spending lines that are popping up over the next 10 years. This starts in 2025, guys. Revenue split starts in 2025, fall of 2025, which is like right now. That's like now in the world of finance, and like it's next year. So there's no time to waste. Trev Alberts was on top of it. I know that was it was debated. It was, what's the word? Yeah, it was in question, but it makes sense that he had to do that. Everyone's gonna have to do that. The NCAA is doing that. The NCAA is gonna have to make budget cuts. So yeah, Trev Alberts was ahead of it there. Rangers King says, I do, however, think the system is a lawless and there needs to be structure, absolutely, both for the game and the players. They need broader projections than current system offers. Right now it's the Wild West, and it will continue to be the Wild West for several years until we finally settle in on things. These lawsuits take place. It's going to take a while, but I wouldn't mind, and it's going to happen, the professionalization of the sport if it means organization, consistency, and fairness across the board. And that's really what we're cornered into right now. It's going to look more like a pro game. I think it's a matter of time. Players are going to become employees, which they aren't yet. They're getting a revenue split, but they are not employees yet. So, guys, we'll get more into that once Max gets on. I'm sure Max has a lot to tell us about that. Of course, the Aggie offense. So, like I said, I set out on a journey to watch every snap that Connor Wigman took as a Texas A&M Aggie. And in doing so, I can bring you some notes about Connor, things we already know, but I confirmed by watching film. You guys should do this too. It's the offseason. If you want to watch football, go watch Connor. But I also discovered a lot of things, or realized a lot of things about the offense that are pretty exciting going into next year. So first about Connor, and just confirming things that we know. This kid excels at feeling pressure. This is probably his best attribute as a college quarterback right now. In the pocket, he is able to navigate and anticipate pressure before it's on top of him. And if it does get on top of him, he's ready for it, and he can get the ball out accurately while there's someone on top of him. It happened time and time again because he had a pretty bad offensive line, eventually resulting in his injury. But his footwork is amazing. His accuracy under pressure is really good, but it all kind of stems from his footwork. So it just increases the urgency that Connor needs to be 100% by the start of the season. The fact that he was healthy in spring bodes well for those chances. He's an underrated improviser with his legs. He's likely not going to warrant a spy. He's likely not going to have that guy that just watches the quarterback at the line of scrimmage, hovers over him, mirrors him. I don't think he gets that. I don't think he's that kind of scrambler. But in anticipating pressure, reading a defense, he knows how and when to scramble. And very often, he was a clutch scrambler on third and medium to long plays. So, again, in order to do this, you got to be healthy with that foot. This is a foot injury. It affects every other step, I guess, technically every other step. Health. His best attributes is pocket presence, but he needs good footwork for that. His accuracy is probably his next best step. His accuracy under pressure. Oh, and his anticipation on balls. He's throwing that kind of ball that you throw before the receiver is open. It's just a high-level ball from such a young guy. Dating back to his freshman year when he started, the end of 2022, yeah, he throws guys open. Under pressure. He has those attributes that make a quarterback very special. Mechanics are great. There are a couple of flaws. Maybe one main flaw that I've noticed from him. And this actually happened in the spring game too. For whatever reason, and I don't know if this is a Jimbo coaching thing, because Kellen Mond had this problem too. For whatever reason, he gets the ball there, but he is not super accurate with screens and bubble plays. He doesn't throw the ball to the guys in their path. Guys typically have to slow down or turn around to catch his bubble ball, and we saw that as recently as in the spring game. So maybe it's a Jimbo thing. Maybe they weren't coached right over the last few years, and that's kind of ingrained in him right now. Colin Klein and company are going to have to work that out of him. That's something we need to see fixed up, because you do have some weapons with the ball in their hand in this offense. You're going to want to get Ruben Owens that ball moving forward on his track on these kinds of plays. You're going to want to get Moose Muhammad the ball where he can make a move instead of have to regroup and regather, giving the defender time. You have to angle these players right behind the blockers as well, which we saw in the spring game. I think it was to Amari Daniels. He kind of threw the ball behind him, and the blocker, which I think was Cyrus Allen, didn't have an opportunity to get in front of the guy because the guy was out of angle and the guy was just able to run past Cyrus Allen on the block. So that's one thing he needs to work on. Obviously, the other thing, he just needs to keep maturing. He needs to gain some strength. He needs to be able to slide a little bit better. A couple times he didn't slide. I don't blame that for the injury, obviously. The injury was kind of like a blindside situation right to the ankle. I don't think that's related, but he does need to learn to slide. He needs to bulk up, keep maturing, which is just going to happen. You know this kid's been hitting the weight room. He's had no choice but to do so in recovering from the injury. So guys, just some highlights on Connor. It really adds to the urgency of getting healthy. Fix that little bubble screen up a little bit. You'll be fine. But he needs to get that confidence back, man. In watching Connor, like I said, I was able to observe the rest of the offense. I realized that our skill guys have been playing since 2022. Moose, before that. Noah, he played a lot in the second half of 2022. Donovan Green, we're hoping he comes back healthy. He played all of 2022. He has a full season under his belt. He comes back healthy. That's an SEC veteran. You get a full season under your belt, you're an SEC veteran. Le'Veon Moss, spelled A-Chain a lot in 2022. Returned kicks in 2022. We saw peaks of him 2 seasons ago. Amari Daniels was the backup running back in 2022. So the conclusion that I kind of came to is we're fielding a veteran offense in 2024. Even the offensive line. I mean, you look at Dewberry. You look at the other one. I have it in my notes here. Zune. Sorry. These guys all played in 2022, 2 seasons ago. And then they played all last year. Veterans. Last year, Basantis and Naboo played the entire season. Naboo played a little bit in 2022, and he was here the whole year learning and growing. Fathery, obviously, been here a while. Crownover, been here a while. Now, Fathery is an enigma, right? Like, we don't really know what happened. But we do know that he has a ton of experience under his belt. And we saw him at his best in 2021. So more guys that are veterans. You have veterans at the O-line. You have veterans at running back. You have veterans at wide receiver. Now, of course, with certain players leaving the program, you have to rely on them a little bit more. I mean, Evan Stewart's gone. There's a ripple effect in the wide receiver room. Running backs, same as last year. Not really a ripple effect there. Just go out and get better. Offensive line, you lose Foster. But aside from that, same group. So I didn't really put 2 and 2 together about these guys having been here through SEC play for quite a while. I can't think of an inexperienced player that A&M will be fielding week 1 on offense. Really. So I know when we look at the team going into Notre Dame, we look at, okay, this is it right now, top 10 defense, week 1. You have to go do it. You have to go get it right away. But you're not doing this with rookies. You're doing it with a new coaching staff. Yes. And you're doing it with a quarterback that you hope is healthy and a tight end that you hope is healthy. Based on the timeline, they should be. But I can confidently say A&M will field a veteran offense in 2024. When I hear people talk about A&M, what they say is, oh, you know Elko's going to have a great defense. They really short up that secondary, and they're really good up front. Okay, yeah, that's there. But what if this offense doesn't really skip a beat? That's on the table, guys. I don't want to pump sunshine. I told you. I warned. Was it when I got cut off, maybe? I warned you this would be a hopium stream tonight. Because sometimes we have to be real about things, and I try to give you the straight shot. I try to tell you, okay, this is a hole. Look out for this. Experience is not a hole this year, guys. Experience is absolutely not a hole. We could be looking at a much, much improved offense from week 1 next year. I know they're going to have to learn the playbook, and the coaches are going to have to learn personnel. Another thing I also noticed, and this is a very specific thing that I noticed, Amari Daniels was pretty damn good. Dating back to 2022, I know he had a couple of fumbles that linger really strong in our minds. I think the one versus Miami and then the one in the bowl game. He thrives off of good blocking. When he gets into open space, he's a downhill runner. But he needs good blocking. He's not great at that contact at the line of scrimmage. That's not his strength. That's more of a Le'Veon Moss thing. He'll push people forward, big people forward. If Daniels gets good blocking, he's pretty damn good. I'm looking at the LSU game, 2022. A-Chain got spelled in the 3rd quarter. Daniels didn't skip a beat. That was the one game that year the O-line played well. Daniels was running all over the place, and we've seen it at times in spurts late in games when he gets spelled in. Daniels is an adequate running back, so I'm thinking of this running back room as a 1-2 combo. Moss is the bell cow, Owens is the change of pace. I think you have 3 or 4 changes of pace depending on what EJ Smith is. So I just wanted to highlight Amari. Don't forget about him. He's had some really good moments in an Aggie uniform. I was kind of surprised when I saw him play again. Another thing that was huge in 2022, I already mentioned it, touched on it. Donovan Green was a really important player as a safety valve, just like Weidemeyer was before him, from the same high school at that. I don't know if I'd feel good going into the season without him. Colin Klein likes to use every offense today needs a tight end, a good tight end, a safety valve. He was really good at the tight end screen too, slipping out, getting open, very athletic, able to run an open field, really good in the red zone. It's a piece that we're going to need to reach our ceiling, I think. Now, there's been a lot of hype about Trey Watson, who is, I think his name is Trey Watson, right, guys? Help me out here. The transfer out of Fresno State. A lot of hype from Trey Watson coming out of spring camp. He's also not healthy. Maybe we can get by with him. I don't know. I don't know if the Swede, Theo Nordstrom, and Jaden Platt are ready to be that guy this year. I think they both need one more year. I think they can both play, but I think if you're going to reach your goals, you need Donovan Green or hit the upside of that Trey Watson kid. But really, it's Donovan Green. He was so important, dude. So many safety valve catches. Nothing else is there. Throw it up to the tight end. He was forming chemistry with Connor, too. Those are my main notes, guys. Those are my main notes. I just feel like this offense is being slept on a little bit. And of course, there's the learning curve. We got to get over that. But if you do, if you're able to at least play clean, no pre-snap penalties, get in and out of plays, don't fall if you're an offensive lineman, don't just bust. Just stick to your assignments. If you're not technically perfect, if you're not the strongest, just stick to your assignments. Don't do the wrong thing. We saw that too many times under Adazio. Linemen just wrong assignment or falling backwards. Fix that. Rangers King says, if you're calling 10 in a safety valve, what does that make Buford Jennings? A security blanket? Superstar. Just a straight up superstar, Buford Jennings. But all right, guys, that's my offensive spiel tonight. If anybody wants to call in, call-in link is open. Right now, I have Max and Theo waiting. I'm going to go through the chat one last time, then we'll get Max on. I'm sure we're going to touch on some more lawsuit stuff. See what we're doing. Wegman has high upside, quick release, fast processor, and is immune to pressure, says Carson. Absolutely. There's really not a ton of negative with him besides that weird bubble gripe with him that I have. He's a really good, technically sound, ballsy player. And we saw him without good protection besides that LSU game. That was the one game he had great protection for whatever reason. But besides that, that man was under constant pressure, and we still have the scouting report that we have on Connor Wegman. So, yes. Keep Connor clean, he'll put video game numbers, says Jeb. Yeah, I think so, dude. If he's clean, your receivers stay healthy, or you have guys stepping up, absolutely. Underrated scrambler, absolutely. Immune to pressure is a very rare trait in college football, says Jeb. Absolutely. Pocket awareness is so important. Yes. Elko said he would be 100% going into the week versus Notre Dame. If he said that, I feel good. I believe him. Physically, 100%, he'll need time to gel with these receivers. Well, here's the thing, Carson, that I kind of realized. Besides Jade, he's had a good amount of time with Moose and Noah and Donovan. Those were his main targets in 2022. His few starts he had that game, but in practice, he was practicing with those guys too. They looked good in 2022. They looked good early 2023, and that was including Jade. But with the new offense, sure, that's going to be there. That's going to be there. Jeb says Mond always seemed indecisive a little bit. Moose, Thomas, and Walker will be in the NFL. Look, if they become consistent, that's the word. If they're consistent, yeah, they all have that upside. Absolutely, especially Noah. But, yeah, dude, 100%. I think Mond became less confident when he didn't scramble. It seemed like he was coached not to scramble. I will agree Mond was sneaky fast, really sneaky fast. I think Cyrus Allen's the most underrated guy on the offense right now. He'll be a good deep threat. I hope so, man. That's the one guy we don't have is the speedster at receiver. I like the receivers. If a speedster emerges, could be Cyrus Allen, that'd be great. Offense is loaded with veterans, absolutely, says Jeb. Rolly says, I think Wegman's season will come down to whether the O-line can block for him and keep him from getting injured. We all know if Wegman gets protection, he'll tear up a defense. It comes down to the O-line. It doesn't have to be perfect, guys. Just good. Just better. Don't let him get hit. He can have guys close to him. He's damn good like that. But yeah, the better protection, the better. I mean, we saw Connor without good protection. He was good. With good protection, sky's the limit. Jeb says the offense will be much improved. Carson says in the SEC, most games are won in the trenches. Absolutely. That's why we're circling that O-line. I think we feel good about the D-line. The more I think about the D-line, and we're not really doing a defensive talk tonight, but the more I think about this D-line, the more I feel like the defensive ends, Shamar Turner, who's not a defensive end, but he's kind of a hybrid, but he was a defensive end. Some of these guys can make up for that one personnel hole this defensive line has, and that's a depth at the nose tackle. I think there's just so much good going for this D-line that I think this D-line is going to be top 10 in the country. I'm really feeling like that. They're coming out of that secondary, how quickly they adapt. Rolly says, I'm drinking all the Kool-Aid when it comes to the Aggie offense. Sure. Daniels is good when you get him going, says Jeb. Yep. If the O-line can take a good step, this team could be elite. Absolutely. David with a very relatable comment. I've been burned so many times by Aggie football, I just can't get excited anymore. I hear you, man. I hear you. Jeb says, yeah, I thought for sure Daniels would have transferred out. The tight end group definitely seems shaky, but we have 7 on the roster, so someone should probably break out. I hope so. I really want Green back, but is he going to be healthy? Does he need time to get up to speed? We'll have to see. Carson says, would be huge if Fathery could get back into freshman form, dude. Right tackle, I'm so comfortable with the personnel in the O-line if they're all going to take steps forward. But right tackle is the one position group, the one position on that O-line that I think is a little bit in question because Fathery's that enigma, up and down, most recently an injury-riddled 2023, we think. Crownover still on that trajectory, becoming a true right tackle from the tight end he was in high school. We've seen inconsistency from him. Some really good play, some really bad play. It would be amazing if Fathery could get back to form. That would make me feel really comfortable with the starting 5, having Crownover off the bench to back up Fathery. You'll have guys starting and backing up inside and outside with that 5. Because you can have Armaj Reed Adams come off the bench as the spell either guard. You could have maybe Naboo's the spell for Fowie from Utah. So you have like options to rotate guys at O-line. And I know O-line's not a heavily rotated position group, but injuries stack up. So that's a good thing to have. Matthew Dawson, good to see you, man. Where do you rank approximately this running back room relative to the rest of the SEC? I feel like there's slightly less talent in the conference this year than in past years. That's a good point. And with the kid out of Ole Miss transferring out, that really empties one of the best rooms out. I think they have Bentley now, and then the transfer. I would put it upper tier, I think, going into the year, although I think there's a little bit of prove it left in this running back room. I think we need to see Moss stay healthy. I think we need to see Owens remain on that positive trajectory he's been on. But I think it has potential to be a top 3 or 4 room in the SEC next year. Absolutely. Troy says, I'm an A&M fan, but we will always go for 8-4 every year. Well, with that attitude, we will. No, I hear you, man. I hear you. That's just how it's been. But everything you need to win is here. We've talked about this many times. You just need the right pilot. And we hope Elko's that guy. He's done nothing wrong so far. Apparently, they just rated our secondary top 10 going into the season. I saw they rated our corner group top 10. On3 did. That was interesting. Rangers King says, before I get on, shout out to Longstreet for getting that 5th star from 247. Absolutely. Yes, he did. He's a 5-star. Hassan Longstreet, the cornerstone of the recruiting class so far, got that 5th star. I wish I was into A&M in 2020. Yeah, that was a good year. I wish I was a student in 2012 as well. Now, why Keelan Russell doesn't have one, even though he deserves one, that's a political matter. I think we know to worry about. I think we worry about right tackle, but Crownover can be serviceable. He'd be a lot better at the end of the year. Jacob says, talk to Green on X. He seemed confident that he's 100%. Look, if you have 100% Green, your starting skill positions, including tight end, quarterback, absolutely solid veteran group with a new coaching staff as the caveat. And we think there's improvement to be made with this new coaching staff. All right, guys, that does it for the comments. Let's get Max on with Drew. Max, you're on with Drew. What's on your mind tonight, my friend? I think I have a feeling I know what you want to talk about.
Oh man, it's breaking news.
Big time, man.
Breaking news. I'm shocked. I'm shocked the official statement came out tonight. I thought we'd have to wait for the official word tomorrow from the people, but no. They're like, we need to release a statement tonight. You like cut out whenever you were talking about it earlier, so I don't know if you read the statement or not.
I didn't read the statement. I went through the outline of the whole settlement is what I really did.
Okay, yeah. So we could read it later because it's just fascinating to see like the public comments from all five conferences co-signing the same,
Yeah.
and the NCAA co-signing the same exact press release. Like that's not something you see every day.
It's crazy. It's like they got that last signature today from the Pac-12 and then they're just like, "Okay, let's make the statement." Yeah,
And
guys,
the
if you're just
NCAA too.
yeah, SEC was this morning. Yeah. Guys, if you're just filtering in, we're going to talk about a settlement from the House versus NCAA lawsuit that got signed by all five Power Five conferences today. NCAA has made a statement confirming this is the case. It's a formality for it to go through. What's going to happen is I'll give you the outline here and Max can get more into it. You're going to have revenue share with players over the next 10 years. It's going to be with current and former players dating back to 2016. Also, there's a $2.77 billion amount of money that needs to be paid in this settlement. That will be raised 40% from the NCAA itself, and the rest will be raised by the teams, with the teams in the bigger conferences paying a bigger chunk than the teams in the smaller conferences. That is the rough outline. It's significant because we're not sure if smaller teams are going to survive this or what kind of reformation is going to happen as a result of paying so much money. So from there, Max, I'll give you the floor.
Okay, so I want to know a couple of things because there have been some misconceptions. First off, this settlement agreement is not final. I mean, it has been agreed upon like between the parties now initially, but now there's like a whole lot of it has to get approved by the judge. There's all this process stuff that happens that something like this settlement framework will go through in the very end. But this is just a okay, we're kickstarting the official settlement in the court process instead of settlement negotiation process. So we're about the next however many months is gonna be a lot of grainy details before we get to the real end of this. But this is the beginning of the
Yep.
end. Second off, this does not shut down any other potential for lawsuits from other parties,
Right.
and it does not merge any existing cases that were not already merged into this settlement. For example, there's a case for some, I think it's $1 billion in the state of Colorado for another antitrust lawsuit, Fontenot versus NCAA, and that is not getting merged into this. So there are still other lawsuits that are going on and that can be filed in the future. This does not prevent any of that.
Right.
So that's very important because people are acting like this is all settled now. It's all over with. No,
The
this is
end all
just the
be all.
beginning.
Right.
This is just the beginning. Um, so first off, this dollar amount we're talking about, this $2.7 billion, it is for whatever players could not earn an NIL before 2021. So it is only going to be given to current athletes and past athletes, and the vast majority of the money, I think it's like 90% of the money, is going to go to like Power Five, and I think there's some that are going to be like some high major, like Big East might be having to pay out some more money, but like the vast majority of the athlete money is going to go to those bigger conference athletes.
Right.
Um, and while yes, there is going to be uh, there is going to be most of the money is going to be paid uh like the vast majority like unit money, like in terms of like which conference individually is paying the most, is going to be like the Power Five. But in terms of who is generating revenue, 60% of the revenue is being generated. I mean that the 60% of the revenue that's being earned was for the Power Five, and yet they're only paying out back 40%, and everybody else combined in Division 1 is paying 60%. This has actually caused a major rift between the Power Five and everybody else, including the football group of five and like FCS
Yep.
and not and no football type of programs. So There's been a massive split. The Big East has been leading a massive outcry. So there's going to be turbulence on that front that I don't even know what to do with, not to mention like all these small FCS conferences.
Yep.
No idea what's going to happen there. Let's see. Oh, what else? Oh, the revenue sharing in the future that is being proposed and that is part of the framework. It would be some sort of cap that all schools in Division One, or I think it was just FBS, but it could be all Division One, are allowed to pay their athletes combined direct from the school. Like total for each school is like 22 million, I think was the proposed number.
Yep.
But that is it's dependent on like some percentage of revenue. And I can't remember exactly how they determined what that revenue number is, but they said 22 million. So that is for the future, right? So that has nothing to do with this $2.7 billion. That is for past and current athletes who were not getting NIL before 2021.
Right.
So that 22 million is a go forward for each program in the future if they want to pay up to that much. They're not required to. It is something they would choose to do. And also, in order to take part in that revenue sharing, future athletes would have to opt in to the house settlement, which may not be to their advantage because the framework is still very loose and somewhat poorly constructed, if not seriously poorly constructed. And so as a result, you could see more lawsuits of players opting out and demanding different frameworks for getting paid than the house settlement, which is just going to cause more chaos. This is so far from over.
Yeah,
I
man.
just can't emphasize that. It is so far from over. Even
Right.
after this case gets over with, this situation is just the beginning.
Yep. Okay, so answer me this, Max. Who and what is at jeopardy here? I feel like we're gonna have to see sports get cut, budgets get cut by way of non-revenue generating sports for some schools. I feel like maybe football has to be cut, and you mentioned relegation. What is at jeopardy here?
So I think what will happen is expenses will be cut, particularly but not exclusively for non-Big Two Power Five schools like your Iowa States, who have made public comments about how they're going to have to cut their budget significantly, or for example, say Georgia Tech or whoever, right?
Yeah.
They're in a tough spot because their TV deals are not increasing by many multiples of what their prior deal was. So they're not getting this massive inflow of cash that they can use to sort out all this revenue sharing BS.
Right.
So they have to figure out other ways, whether it's private equity, quote unquote, as we're going to get to later, or whether it's raising extra money or cutting costs or doing more things that could generate revenue. They have a lot of problems and minefields on their plate, and there are no easy solutions. Cutting sports will be on the table. I think what will happen, though, for the most part, will be that some small departments that like maybe have football in these small FCS conferences might consider it because of these NCAA tournament units they're losing out on. But the real cutting sports thing will be the schools who decide to revenue share but don't have the money to make it happen up to the max, but want to do the max or like want to push past whatever they're actually capable of.
Right.
They're to find ways to do that they would not be capable of with their current structure. And that's going to cause all sorts of hairy situations, whether it is cutting sports, as you mentioned, or whether it is private capital, private equity. There's so much uncertainty, right? Like I couldn't even tell you where this is going to begin, where this is going to end, because there's
Right.
just so much we don't know, despite all this that we're getting thrown at on our face, that we've known where this was coming. We just didn't know exactly how the axe was going to fall. And now it's starting to chop away, man.
Yep. You mentioned the private equity firms. Max, you got a rapper situation. You got to stop. You got a rapper situation. It's loud in the mic.
I'm so sorry, man. I just got to get this in the microwave, so hold on.
Okay. So the private equity firm situation, it kind of just arose over the last couple of days, right? In its actuality, like we have, I forget the name of the firm that popped up. We were talking about it. And essentially, this firm is going to, I guess, subsidize programs, give money to programs in exchange for revenue sharing, rather than having these programs go into debt, which is cool. It may allow programs to absorb this new budget line that is arising with this new House versus NCAA settlement. However, my fear with this private equity situation is that these private equity firms are going to want to meddle to increase their bottom line, just like the boosters do for programs that they love. I think that's more winning oriented. Of course, it's bottom line oriented as well. But with these private equity firms, I'm worried they're going to meddle just to get the money amount that they want.
Well, the best way to put about meddling is they will offer services. It's kind of like consulting. They'll offer services, and the schools will be in a position where if they unless they strongly disagree with the advice, they're going to be inclined to take their whatever insights they have, because they're the ones who are giving them money, and if they want to keep getting money from them in the future and not get money pulled from them or whatever, or not get sued for not getting returns whenever they were supposed to because they didn't listen to them on XYZ, that might be an issue. But the meddling will be what the school permits them to be involved in meddling somewhat, and also at the same time it will be based on how much of an investment you're putting in on the front end, and whether how capable the firms think they can get money back on the back end, right?
Yep.
I certainly I think this particular one that's been released is less like terrible on the face of it than some other ones that I've heard about. Like, first off, this particular firm, one of them is like very involved in sports already. Like, they are a sports business firm and other stuff, but they are all over sports business on every side of it, from owning teams to companies that do data and hospitality to just all of it. They've done the whole everything, media, all of it. They've done everything. So for that, I'm more comfortable with it than others, because I feel like at least they vaguely know how to work with sports, and you're not just going to have these random, like, soulless, non-sports interested companies get involved in this to try to make money and sink athletic departments.
Right.
But I think this is just one. This is just one case, right? We're gonna have all these other cases where they're gonna be, instead of doing royalties, they're gonna be lending money and charging insane amounts of interest,
Yeah.
and you're not gonna know how these athletic departments are gonna keep up. With that being said, even in this seemingly somewhat more beneficial scenario, you're putting yourself under a lot of pressure here, right? There's a lot of pressure here to perform and completely change your business model. And I hate using the word business model, but let's be real, these athletic departments have been businesses generating profits and just taking the excess money and spending it on whatever they can so that they can not be for profit. But let's be real, they basically operate as if they are.
Yeah.
So it's just now they gotta wrangle that business model in even more, and it's going to be so messy. People are going to get fired in athletic departments, and I can't predict what is going to happen with all of this, and I can't say it's going to be a total good, and I can say there will probably be many instances where it is bad. But at the same time, the system is so messed up that we put the schools in a position where they have no other choice, and it's kind of their own making. So here we are.
Right. Okay, Max. Are you with me, Max?
Yeah, I'm with you.
I gotta reset my mic. Oh no, we're back. We're back. I lost audio for a second, but we're back. We're good. Yeah, man. I don't know. There's so much uncertainty going forward. I guess we have to keep following it. What else you got on this, man? I've pretty much exhausted my knowledge and input on the subject because there's just so much unknown, so much we have to watch play out going forward.
uh I think I think the biggest thing I'm worried about is that this is not actually going to fix anything. This is just a short-term solution the NCAA loves to do, and that because they don't have the capability to fix this problem on their own, and it's because they didn't fix it when they could have. And so it's just kicking the can, and I'm worried we're going to kick the can so many times that eventually we're just going to end up exploding the can,
Yeah.
basically. And
Right.
this is gonna the entire system's gonna blow up, and the big two is gonna break away and do their own thing, and the rest of college sports just collapses like
I
a
think
tower of
that's
bricks.
I think that's what happens too. That's that I think it makes sense. I think within the next, I think I'm putting a 15-year cap on it. I think within 15 years we're gonna have the big two or whatever we're gonna call it. We'll have the future, the new entity, whatever it might be. I'm giving it 15 years. What if you had to put a time frame on it, just to add some context here? How long do you think this process of lawsuit wars and settlements and restructure goes on before the can explodes?
Well, I think the only way that it's going to not explode is if the players win, and it's going to sound painful for people, but unless the employment model gets enforced and there's forced to be a mandated structure or someone bargains and puts one in, this is never going to end until it explodes. And I agree, it will be like a decade or so, 15 years. Basically, once the new CFP deal expires, I'd imagine that's when it starts all going down. But man, I mean, I'm optimistic that the players who are fighting so hard for a structure that actually makes sense instead of whatever this is that's cooked up by some legal firm that
Yeah.
doesn't actually make any sense, but it's just about getting money to clients, which is what their job is. So, fair enough. But this doesn't make any sense. Like, this doesn't make any sense for the sports. It doesn't make any sense for the NCAA. It doesn't make any sense for the schools. It doesn't really make any sense for the athletes. But the athletes are put in a position where they have no other successful recourse right now, other than suing and trying to unionize or whatever until some sort of system puts in place, because the NCAA won't come to the table and agree to collectively bargain. And it's just going to keep being like that until they agree to bargain and put in some type of proper system and agreement in contract form in place that can be negotiated at the table instead of whatever this Wild West is.
Yep.
And we're going to be here year after year after year, and lawsuit after lawsuit, billions of dollars, and it's just never going to end. And it's all because of the mindset of the system has been broken from the start, and we're just now finally seeing the house of cards collapse.
Exactly. Well, all right, Max. I think that's a good way to cap it tonight. I'm sure we're going to keep revisiting this as things develop over the weeks. I got some callers waiting, so we're going to get out of here, but I appreciate you calling in, adding context to this, and I trust you'll be the guy that keeps following this for us and continue to add context. So thank you, Max.
Best of luck. Hopefully, somehow the sport can survive, because my Mustang's life depends on it, man.
Oh, I know. I know. We'll see what happens, man. Have a good night.
See you, man.
Yeah, we're in a fortunate position with A&M, guys. I do think A&M is obviously set to adapt and react and survive with whatever happens. We're in a good situation because other programs, like his Mustangs, very much in flux, don't know what'll happen. Smaller programs, Iowa State, most of the Big 12, a lot of the ACC. Who knows what happens to them when this whole thing totally restructures and maybe we have a Big 2. I think we Aggies will still be cheering on our Aggies in SEC football in falls going forward. And guys, I know this is crazy. This is all breaking news and whatnot. We still have footballs and Saturdays in the fall. We still have college game day, week 1 versus Notre Dame. It's all still happening, guys. This is just the big picture here. We got to stop and look at things sometimes because this is the future of our sport. But we still got Aggie football. All right, I'm going to get into the next caller. Christopher, you're on with Drew. What's on your mind tonight, my friend?
What's going on, my brother? Long time no talk. How you been?
Good, man. How you been? Haven't heard from you since the football season.
Yeah, it's been a minute. I've been pretty busy doing my thing. And it's funny because I was just hearing Max talk about all that stuff. And as you may remember from some of our conversations, that I want to get into coaching, specifically college.
Yes, sir.
And I feel like I'm walking into the Lions Den. I've watched certain people speak on this, Saban and all that. And it's a mess. And this whole I'm not gonna get into the whole lawsuit thing right now because I haven't had a chance to look at it because obviously it just came out today. But I will say this: it's not gonna fix what they're thinking it's gonna fix. It's gonna cause more issues, and than what it's worth. This is definitely not over, as Max was saying. And
Absolutely. And I think the current structure of this settlement is really just the NCAA surviving, because if they would have taken this to court, $4 billion lawsuit, uh,
they would have lost.
they would have lost, and that would have been the end of the NCAA right there. $4 billion. How do you don't
Right.
come back from that?
That's like the whole NCAA's net worth right there.
Yeah, yeah. So this is them saving face. All these little details. None of it makes sense, and this is just them surviving. That's how I see. That's how I see it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say this, and this is, for me anyway, part of the things that this is why I want to get into college sports to begin with, because a lot of coaches see it, see the problem, but they really don't know how to deal with the problem. So they just kind of go along with it. And I'm here to tell you that if we go along with it, it's going to destroy the sport. And we're lucky, you know, to be in a position to kind of adapt. But there's going to be schools that if we don't uh, do something, that are going to crumble. I'm looking at like the smaller schools, the SMU's, the BYU's, the uh, you know, I'm sure there's 100 that I could
Yeah,
name, but I mean, it's not. It shouldn't just be about the bigger schools, because that's not what the sport's about. You've got guys that are not going to go pro per se, but they're using sports to pay for their college. And if we keep going the way we're going, these opportunities that these guys have are going to be ripped away from them, and it's not fair. Now,
right,
I've got my own ideas on how on how I feel like we should operate, but I'm not going to get into that, because it would take me 3 hours you know to divulge all that, because again, this is something that I've pondered over probably the past couple years, as I've seen it happen. And it's just something that I've felt led to, as I work my way into coaching, try to fix, because I
right,
I know that it's not gonna survive like this.
right. And I will say this towards your endeavors. There's kind of this question that a lot of coaches get thrown at these days, especially newer coaches like an Elko that's becoming a head coach over the last couple of years versus a Saban who's been around for a while. Is there an advantage to kind of growing up during this restructure era, because you kind of have a bird's eye view of the things that went wrong, the
Wait,
things that are
what?
changing, and things that might be better in the future? Do you think there's some sort of an advantage to kind of not being set in your ways before getting into it?
Here's what I'll say to that, is that okay, I understand wholeheartedly why coaches like Saban and all those guys are getting out of the sport at the time that they're getting out of it, because they don't know what to do or how to do it, because they've never really had to deal with something like this. But for a guy like Elko, or somebody on the younger side, such as me, I can kind of look at this and go, okay, this isn't going anywhere. So we need to embrace it in a way that we can uh, structure it enough to make it to where the sport can survive.
Right, right,
Because I understand that if we don't it's gonna self-destruct itself. And I've got buddies of mine that work in the business, and they're like, regionality's gone, this and that and the other, and I'm like, yeah, you're right, but here's the problem. You're trying to go back to the, let's say, the early 2000s, where it was about going to college and playing ball for because you loved the school and the traditions behind it. And it's not like that anymore. And they're like, can we not just go back to it? And I said, no, this is the 21st century. This is how it is, even though some people don't necessarily agree with where it's going,
Yeah,
that's where it's going, and we have no choice but to deal with it. And
absolutely.
if we don't deal with it, we're just gonna shoot ourselves in the foot.
That's right. Pandora's box is open and there's no closing it. And now I say you lean into the modern era, whatever that means, as much as you have to.
Yeah,
Such
which is what I'm getting at, because if we don't lean into it and kind of, I guess in a better term, take the bull by the horns, the bull's gonna take us out.
right. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, man. You have to lean into it. There's no going back now. You need to find some sort of stability. Less of this wild, wild west. Less of this lawsuit
And
after
and
lawsuit,
and
adjustment
again,
after adjustment.
like I said, I've got my own ideas that, um, again, I've talked to. I don't know anybody that high up, but I've talked to certain people, and they are, they've actually told me, they're like, you actually have sane ideas on how to make this work. Because again, I've pondered this ever since the beginning, and I will say this: watching the Johnny Manziel Netflix documentary really got my mind turning on how, it's funny, on how we can, make this work, because it's funny because Cliff Kingsbury says something in that documentary. He goes, the things that players have now, Johnny didn't have. And I'm sitting here going, like, what are you talking about? Because it's the same way it was when Johnny was here. But the thing is, it's coming to the light now.
Yeah.
So, it's like, how are we okay with this? You know what I mean?
I know, man. I know. It's a really weird time,
I
but
mean, and again, I won't get into everything that I would think, but I think one of the things that we need to do is we need to, uh, salary cap by division, because you cannot universal salary cap this thing, because it's just not on a equal level playing field.
correct. Correct.
The only way that you're going to be able to do this, Drew, is to salary cap it by division, because you can't take the NCAA like the NFL and say, okay, here's your universal salary cap, go. And I think, if I'm being honest, I think, with this lawsuit thing that came out today, that these bigger schools need to take a a big hit, because if they don't, then it's going to be a problem, because this right here is going to end up taking the smaller schools out.
Yeah, they can't all be held to the same standard, right?
No,
There's
no,
a different level of finance based on the size of these schools, the prestige of the schools. And
right. I'm trying to do what I can to preserve that, because to be quite honest with you, we cannot lose the smaller schools. We can't do it.
and from what I understand, all of the Power Five is being, I guess the word is penalized equally. So that means A&M, Texas, Alabama, they're getting hit just as hard as Iowa State, Oklahoma State, the smaller Power Five schools.
See, and it shouldn't. I'm sorry, but it shouldn't be like that,
Right. Right.
because it's gonna kill them. It's gonna hurt them more than what people realize.
Right. Right. All right, Chris. Let's get on to a different topic while I have you, because I'm sure you want to talk a little Aggie football. Does that sound all right? We'll just talk about the Aggie offense a little bit.
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, yeah.
This show, I was splitting between this breaking news, but I don't know if you listened to the beginning part of the show. I did a rewatch of all of Connor Wigman's snaps as an Aggie. And in doing so, I came to the realization that A&M is fielding a veteran offense next year. Do you want to expand on that? Talk about the offense, talk about what your expectations early next year are, because obviously you have a top 10 defense coming to Kyle Field. What are kind of your early thoughts about the offense, maybe some of the hurdles, maybe some of the strengths of it going into the year?
Here's my. I'll start with this. I'll say this, okay. Um, First, I'm going to address the people that think that, Jalen Henderson had a shot to start. Okay, I'll start there. First things first. It's Connor's job. I'm sorry to burst anybody's bubble, but it's Connor's job. It's he he's the best player on the field when he's on the field.
Yeah, let's get this out
Now,
of the way. This is Connor's job. This is
yeah,
Connor's job.
yes, let's get that. Yeah, let's get that straight. Nothing against Jalen, but I think he's still kind of growing and maturing a little bit as a player, and I think there is potential there if, let's say, if Connor balls out like I expect him to, if he decides to declare, which I will get into that in a second. If he decides to declare, I honestly feel like our quarterback room would be fine.
Right.
But I honestly do not think that Jalen should start over Connor. That's first thing. Second thing,
Now, I'll say this real quick. I feel great about the quarterback room. I
yeah,
feel great about the depth. I feel great about the emergency situation. Something happens to Connor. I feel the best. I feel about the top 3 or even 4 if you factor in Miles O'Neill and his raw talent than I felt about the quarterback room in a long time. So it's Connor's job because Connor has that NFL star upside. It's Connor's
yeah,
job. And if A&M reaches their highest goals, Connor is balling out this year. So it takes nothing away from everyone else. It's a great room, but it is
yeah,
Connor's job.
it's a great room. And that's why I addressed it the way that I did. Like
Right.
I'm not saying that Jalen's a bad quarterback. He's not. He's got some great upside with him. But I think for right now, where we are at,
Sure.
it's Connor's job and it's Connor's team. And I will say this for the people that say Texas A&M is in a rebuild, you're wrong. It's called a retooling of certain parts that we had.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, yeah, and and I think this offense can be very explosive when it needs to be, and I think in the okay, so it's obviously hard to judge off of a spring game because of it's the spring game. You're kind of going at full speed, but you're not, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So my what I saw the most is that Connor to me showed great command of the offense. He knew what was going on, even though he was with like not the starting guys, which I'm just gonna say it. I don't feel like they did a very good job of splitting this roster down the middle as they intended to
Yeah, they did not.
for the spring game. They did a better job of that on the defensive side of the ball, but offensively, I felt that Connor Wigman was kind of, again, not saying we have bad players, not even close to saying that, but I honestly felt like Connor Wigman had no help during
Well,
the.
when you think about it, in addition to he had second teamers, walk ons because it's spring, not everyone's there, and they're very cautious with injuries, so a lot of people don't play. But you think about the way you practice, it's like ones versus ones versus twos, get the threes in there every now and then. You just mixed them all up for the spring game. So whatever chemistry you had, if there was any at that point, you didn't really have that to lean on in the spring game either. So there was a lack of chemistry. There's the fact that, yes, I mean, you have walk-ons going up against Nick Scorton. I mean, how's that going to
Yes,
work out for you? So,
not great.
yeah, that's all happened to the spring game. I'll say this, it sucks from the fan perspective, and I know the spring game is a fan thing, but I'm sure the players enjoyed the GM aspect. I'm sure they had fun with that. Plus, it makes us a little bit harder to scout, especially considering we have a new coaching staff.
Like, and for me as a guy that wants to get into the coaching thing, the spring game is great because it allows you, and I'm not trying to like piggyback off of what you're saying, but it for the fans it's one thing, but for a coaching staff it allows you to see what you have in certain positions depth wise, and see what you have in up and coming talent. And like you said, some guys are walk-ons and some guys are new, and they'll get accustomed to the scheme at some point, but it's tough to take away too much or too little from a spring game, because
Correct.
you don't want to go you don't want to go glass full, but you don't want to go glass empty either. So
Yeah.
I've when it comes to the spring game, I've always been a guy that's been okay, glass half full, because it allows me to see what I've got. Because you got to remember, even though that these guys have had spring practice and stuff like that, this is their first chance to be kind of in a game scenario where you're going full speed.
Right. That's right. Yeah, you can't. Here's what you definitely don't take from a spring game, especially the way it's currently structured. But even if you do go ones versus twos in a spring game or ones versus ones, I don't take starters as day one starters. I don't take the rotation as a rotation. I really look at guys. I look at technique. I look at where they're at. In Connor's case, you look at his health. You see he has a long way to go, but he was able to be out there. That's a really cool thing to take away.
Right,
But
and you saw some good things from him and things that he can
yeah,
improve on. Like, for example, there and this is going to be kind of condescending here, but first play of the game for the White. Okay, it was like a RPO RPO play action fake thing. He fakes it to the back and throws an absolute dart over the middle,
that was
and I'm
beautiful.
like, yeah, okay. Like,
Yeah.
is this what we're doing? Okay,
Yeah, that receiver was not close to being open at the time of him throwing it, but by the time the ball got there, he was open. It was such a nice ball.
and that's what you look for in a starting quarterback. Sometimes, because your windows, and I'm sorry, I'm going on a coaching point here, but your windows are like our version of, like, a coach's version of wide open is that,
Yeah.
because there comes a point where you have to, what we call, throw them open. They're not always going to be, one or two steps behind the defensive back, or there might be a guy that's right in front of him that you gotta put a little touch on the ball to put it, you know, in front of the guy to where he can't make a play on it, and only your receiver can.
Right. Right. What else were your takeaways? Any other takeaways, expectations for the offense going forward? Any other guys? I mean, of course, we like our receiver trio. We want to see who emerges behind what we think will be the starting three. That's an interesting case. Terry Bussey got on campus today for the first time. Maybe he plays some receiver. I don't know. Any other maybe things you want to have answered by the time we get week one?
I will say the O line looked more, how do I put this in, like, a, a thought that y'all can understand. Let's say that they looked more competent than they had in the past. They're able to me, they were able to communicate, even though they did give up some pressures and some hurries, but they were able to, for the most part, in my opinion, be able to know what the assignment was and be able to execute it in a way that I hadn't really seen since, maybe the back half of last year started a little bit, but that was nice to see.
Yeah. Yeah, and I like the coaches said, they weren't really focusing on finding a group. They were focused on tearing it down and building it back up from fundamentals, learning assignments. They weren't focusing on getting the five yet. They were focusing on the individual. And I would
Right.
agree that we saw some good individual play from the offensive line
Right,
for
and
sure.
that's how it should be, because again, like I touched on a minute ago, is that you're not really looking for your day ones. You're more looking at, okay, what can we improve on, because this is our first taste of live, quote unquote, game action
Yeah.
in the past, like, what, 6 months.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and for some guys, like maybe first time with the new coaching staff for everybody. And then, of course, I think some of the times things broke down, it was against Nick Scorton and Shamar Stewart, who are probably a problem next year for everybody they go against. So there's that going for him. And the guy next to them was sometimes a walk on. It was weird, but you did see some good individual play.
Yeah, I
Well,
did. Yeah, I did. And there comes a point where you're like, you kind of feel for the walk on a little bit, because you're like, okay, I don't expect you to
yeah,
block that guy across from you, because he's
maybe the best in the country. Yeah,
yeah, all SEC,
yeah,
defensive lineman. But
yeah. It's going to be awesome. I'm not talking defense today, but I'm just thinking about Shamar Turner, Shamar Stewart, and Nick Scorton, and then whichever other D tackle emerges. I mean, come on now. You might have 3 first-rounders starting on that D line. You might. There's a chance.
Yeah, and it was good to see. And I don't want to get into past, but it was good to see like the defense being like used what it was built for. I feel like, and I got to be careful with my words here because you never know who's going to see this type of stuff. But I felt like last year there was a lot of mistakes with personnel grouping.
Yeah, I feel like we didn't lean on our strength as much with the defense before. I'll say it. I feel like we didn't lean on our D line. That's what I mean. I felt
You're
that
right.
I felt that
You're
over the
right.
last 2 years. I'll say that.
Thank you for saying something that need to be said because
Yeah.
and it was good to see that. And I'm excited to see what Coach Bateman and all those guys can come up with that defense because
Yeah.
it's a very talented group that we have. And I think that, again, like I said, anybody that thinks Texas A&M is in a rebuild you know is wrong. It's a retooling.
The pieces are here, man. The pieces are here. They're here now.
Yeah, we've lost some guys, but we had if I'm not, and again, I don't like to get into numbers, so maybe you can help me with this, but I think we had, if I remember correctly, wasn't it like the number one transfer class come
It
in?
depends on where you look. If you look at the net where it's like players leaving versus players coming in, we weren't. But if you look at just the composite players in, we've fluctuated from 1 to 3. I think we're 3 right now. However,
Okay.
I think we covered the most ground with number of players and positions that we improved. Because you had to address the secondary. The simple fact
Yeah.
was last year you only had 2 true corners that were up to SEC play. Beyond that, you had Josh DeBerry playing out of position. You had 2 true freshmen that just weren't ready for like the SEC. They just
Which
weren't ready, and that's
to,
okay.
to be honest with the and again, I don't want to get in the past, but with the DeBerry situation, that I don't. I'm still like, as a guy that wants to be a coach, right? When I heard that DeBerry was going to be coming into A&M, I was like, okay, I'm going to start looking film on this guy. Not once, okay, in DeBerry's career did he play
No,
outside corner.
no,
He was in the slot. So you can't expect a guy to go from like playing outside or playing inside where you're used to having help out there, right? And then all of a sudden you say, "Hey, we're gonna transition you in your 5th year to an outside X corner," which
right.
I'm sorry, but I don't understand the logic there.
Yeah, and last thought before I let you go, Chris, just on that. I thought DeBerry was a solid nickel for us, and I would have been fine if you would have just kept Bryce Anderson at safety last year, commit to DeBerry at nickel, where he was solid. We saw it in the first game, and you just let your true freshmen get cooked out there and learn because that's their position of their future. I would have been more happy with that and getting burned that way.
Yeah, I would have been okay with that because you can, again,
It was
I'm
Javen Thomas and Bravion Rogers, by the way, were the true freshmen. I'm not worried to say their names. I'm sure they would tell you that they were just having a learning curve before our eyes, and they're going to
Yeah,
be better in the
yeah,
future.
and that's gonna happen.
Yeah,
That's gonna happen. Anybody that and sorry, I'm kind of going into coach mode here, but stuff like that's gonna happen.
yeah,
You cannot, in my opinion, again, I don't want to get into philosophical coach stuff,
right.
but you cannot um, move a player because you're experiencing issues somewhere else. I feel like you have to put players at their best in the best position that they can be as a player to win. And
Absolutely.
I felt like there were times that we didn't do that,
Yep.
aka with DeBerry and being on the outside and putting Anderson at nickel, which again, like you said, and I'm not just kind of going along with this, but you know what you said should have happened.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
that's what should have happened. That's what I was expecting, especially after the first game that we played against New Mexico and DeBerry had those 3 picks. I
Yep.
was like, okay, so leave him at nickel, put Bryce there, like up at safety, and then if worst comes to worst, granted, the what I'm about to say does kind of restrict the coverages that you can play, but you can always kick um, safety help to that freshman corner side if you need to.
Sure. Sure. In the next game, I think we saw DeBerry at corner, and we all remember what happened versus Miami. But anyway, Christopher, I appreciate the call tonight, man. I get lost in talking ball, so it's good to talk ball with you. I hope you'll call back again a couple times in the offseason and definitely once the season starts. And I hope you stay well and good luck with your endeavors, man.
Yes, sir. Take care. We'll see you around
Later, Chris.
later.
I love talking ball. I love talking ball. I prefer that to the lawsuit talk, even though we have to talk it. All right, guys. We have Matthew and then Theo on, then we're gonna call it a night. Well, you know how this goes. We're about an hour and a half in. Drew has to use the restroom. I see we have 14 viewers right now. If we could get up to 14 likes while I'm gone and I get back, you'll make me a very happy person. I will be right back, guys. Thanks for bearing with me, guys. And I see we got to 16 likes, so well done. Drew is happy. Let's catch up with the chat real quick, and then we'll get into our last couple of callers. Matt Meyer says, I like DeBerry. Look, I like him too, and I think he got signed by the Cowboys, so we'll see what happens. I just didn't like the way we utilized him. That was it there. That was the thing. Teresa B, good to see you. You had a tornado in Temple. You and Jeb. Jeb was saying the same thing. I hope y'all are okay. I hope your house is okay. I hope your cars are okay. I hope everything's fine, Teresa. Rolly says UTEP, UTSA, Texas State gonna suffer. Yeah, man. Some Texas staples. Sad. Ronnie Barker checking in from Tokyo. We'll be coming to Texas next week for a family emergency. Well, I hope everything's okay, but it's good to hear from you, Ronnie. Checking in from Tokyo as usual. Rolly says all this is just crazy. Wow, I know, man. I know. I don't like when I have to talk about this stuff because it bums me out. I like what we just did with Chris there and just talked football, just bullshitted. That was fun. The stuff before, I feel like we have to talk about it though because it's just the future of the sport that we love so much. Rolly also says, I strongly believe Marcel is going to push Jalen for quarterback too. Yeah, I think so too. I like Jalen. Marcel has more upside. And he has more years of eligibility left. But yeah, they're both good, man. They're both solid backups. I'd be happy with either one as quarterback too. For NFL caliber, if you count Hicks. Yeah, man, I'm waiting to see what Hicks does over this offseason. I think we saw in the spring game, he still has a little bit of strength to gain, a little bit of maturity to happen, but it could be great. All right. Oh, Philip says, can the transfer receiver from Iowa get into the rotation? Did we offer another receiver? I think the 25 recruit Hassan will shake up the quarterback room. If I had to project right now, I think Hassan's like the starter by his redshirt sophomore year. If he sticks around, you never know what happens in the transfer portal era. Because I want to give Marcel Reed his fair shake. He's shown some promise. But Rolly says hit that like button. Y'all did that. I thank you guys greatly. All right, let's get back to the callers. Matthew Dawson of the Red Shirt Sophomore Podcast. You're on with Drew. What's on your mind tonight, my friend?
Oh, can you hear me right now?
Yeah, you're loud and clear. You sound nice and crispy.
Oh, fantastic. Well, hey, I don't want to bum you out, right? But I heard, some of the other callers talking about like, it's gonna, with all this, legislation going on and whatever's gonna happen, that it's all gonna implode on itself, right? But I don't know. I want to hear your thoughts. Like, what do you think that? Like, what does that mean? Like, is that like just it looks different? Like, there's different conference realignments? Because I feel like the value of a football game is never like a college football game isn't necessarily going to lose its value. It might, like television wise, right? Not necessarily. I mean,
Yeah,
in-person fandom, right? Like in traditions and culture, like that
right.
obviously has an impact on regionality. Like, but and the health of the sport obviously depends on regionality. But I don't know. I want to hear your thoughts on like what do you think
Okay.
implosion looks like?
So to be clear, the guy that used the word implosion is an SMU fan, and a school like SMU is definitely more at jeopardy to be left out if there is major college football reformation. So whereas that's one aspect. Another thing I'd like to preface with is that I am in total agreement. Saturdays in the fall, despite whatever happens, games are not changing. And when I'm sitting down watching a college football game, I'm not thinking about conference realignment. I'm not thinking about lawsuit struggles. I'm not thinking about any of that. The value of the college football game is never changing. Now, I think with the actual reference to implosion there, and maybe Max can offer some more context about what exactly he meant in the chat, but to me, that's the NCAA falling apart. That's the SEC and the Big Ten splitting off. And that is major total reformation where many, many teams get left out of the future of what we know as college football, which is the power teams, the top 60 or so teams in the country. So to me, when you say implosion, it's that great divide, that great splitting. The teams that can, afford to keep it together and pay players at the competitive level to field a team that is competitive enough to win a championship, those teams split off. That's what I feel like implosion is. And it doesn't degrade the Saturday football experience at all.
Yeah, I understand that. I mean, if you look at like blue chip ratios though, like I mean, there's already only like maybe 20, 25 teams that could theoretically, like if you're just looking at numbers, like win a national championship, quote unquote.
That is true.
And obviously this changes because we haven't seen the outcome of the transfer portal and like what that, like we haven't seen the full outcome of the transfer portal, like what that does, right? You see teams like TCU, like even Michigan, like they had the blue chip ratio, but it wasn't exceedingly high, right?
Correct. Yeah, it was the least talented championship of the college football playoff era last year based on the blue chip ratio, I think. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I can understand like moving forward, maybe some of those bottom tier teams, but is there also a chance you think that there's just more money that's pumped into this thing, right? Like TNT just signed they just got some rights to some college football playoff games, right? And they're owned by HBO. Like, are they going to start putting games on TBS, like True TV? Like, do you think that there is a chance that with all this going on, that there's just more money being pumped into this as a result of all of this?
I think so, but which conferences are getting that money? It's going to be the top conferences, right? It's going to be the conferences that get the big TV deals. So, yes, but I don't know. I am personally okay if we see the Power 5 split off in some capacity. I don't want to see these Power 5 teams, these Big 12 teams get cut out of the deal. That's what I really don't want to see. So, yes, I think that helps, but I don't think that saves our G5 darlings. That's the problem.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think the ACC is in more jeopardy than.
Oh yeah, I agree. I agree. I happen to care a little bit more about the Big 12. That's why I mentioned them. But you're absolutely right.
Yeah, I agree. Although I do think Jim Phillips is a good commissioner.
Yeah.
For the ACC, he was a Northwestern guy. Did a great job as an athletic director there. But I mean, he's kind of put in between a rock and a hard place right now. But I don't know. I just when I look at this, I'm like, dog, it's so early, man. Like, who knows? Like, what more money's going to be pumped in? Like, if HBO starts like being a big shooter and all this, like, are we gonna have an exclusive media rights deal with a certain conference or two? Like, what's gonna like, I don't know. And like you said, like, yes, sure, the top two, right, are gonna get the better deals, quote unquote. But that was already happening, I guess. So I don't know. I'm still confused by this whole thing.
Oh, me too, dude. You're asking me questions, and I'm a bystander, dude. I really don't know what to expect. I'm just along for the ride, and I have to comment on it because I think it's a major domino. But really, truly, anything could happen. Anything can happen. I really don't know. By the way, I have someone in the chat asking, is this the Matthew Dawson? Is this the Matthew Dawson?
Oh, jeez. Dude, there's Matthew Dawson's out there. If you look at Google, I mean, he's up as a former rugby player, so can't say that I'm the Matthew Dawson, but
yeah.
Appreciate whoever's in the chat.
Yeah. Follow this guy's YouTube channel. He has the Redshirt Sophomore. they go really in depth about a lot of different topics. He knows a lot more about the ins and outs of a lot more teams than I do. So if you want some inside info, go follow these guys at the Redshirt Sophomore. But anyway, do you have any more comments on the lawsuit stuff, the reformation stuff, or do you want to talk a little bit of Aggie football?
I'd like to talk Aggie football. I thought Max did a fantastic job going. Dude, I learned a lot from that caller. So, I mean, you have some good callers on the show, man. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, they've done. Yeah, we get some really good callers, man. And you're a good caller, and we got Theo up next, who knows a lot. So we have a lot of good stuff. Yeah, man, you're great. You're great, man. All right, Aggie football. Subject of the night. If you've been watching, it's the offense. I went back and rewatched all of Connor Wigman's snaps. I'll just let you take it from here because I'm sure you have things you want to talk about. I mean, just put it in the context of like week 1, early 2024, if we're projecting, and if you want to talk about it in that light.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm not going to bring up a ton of Connor Wigman because y'all have already talked,
Yeah.
You're off about that. I mean, watch the film. All right, that speaks loud enough for me.
Yep.
Someone asked, if Jacob Bostic is going to get in the rotation early on. I don't think so, man. I don't know. I mean, again, you're talking to the guy that brought you on the Alex Howard train, so don't
you did bring me on that. Look, I want the veteran starting, and now it looks like it's the Pitt guy whose name escapes me because I'm bad with names. I don't know. We're talking offense, though. I could get on that tangent real easily right now.
Yeah, but I do. Jacob Bostic. I mean, Illinois guy, right? There is actually some sneaky talent in Illinois, as a former Illinois high school football player myself. There is actually good talent, especially in the Chicago area, and that's where Palatine is. It's a suburb of Chicago. He's got the size, he's young, but if you're not getting in the rotation at Iowa, right? And here's the thing: their talent evaluation at Iowa is good, but their coaching is pretty horrendous when it comes to wide. I mean, you look at a guy like Charlie Jones, right, who barely cracked the rotation at Iowa, right? They threw him out there on punt returns. Had more offensive production than anyone on that Iowa offense, just on special teams alone. Transfers to Purdue, gets put in the right system. Even as an undersized guy like him at like 5'11", he pops off.
Right.
So it is early to tell, whether or not Jacob Bostic is going to be a dude. I think he can be a dude. I really like his high school tape for sure. He's got the size and the athleticism and the speed. I think. I don't know the wide receiver room to me. As I know we're looking for more depth in the transfer portal, and we got it with Jacob Bostic, but I don't know if our top end guys are necessarily getting bumped out of that rotation. If you ask me.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so at all. And I think you're happy to go into a season with that trio. Now, the only thing is if you want like a well-rounded group, I don't know if you have like a burner. I don't know if you have that with those three. I think you had it with oh my goodness, name's Jabari Barber. I think you might have had it there, but now he's down. So if you were looking to fill it out, I would look for someone of that mold, maybe just a guy that can just burn, a faster guy. I don't think any of those guys are particularly speedy, but I wouldn't trade any of those three guys. I would go into the year knowing that if we get consistency out of those three guys, you're looking at three guys with NFL potential probably. So no, I mean, yeah, it's all depth. And I think Bostic's a great guy you get a shot at developing. And if you're saying Iowa is a good evaluation of talent, maybe not utilizing guys at the best, then maybe he fits that mold too. I'm good with it. I think if you don't add another receiver right now, you're still okay. I think you're okay. I think you're fine, especially if Jabari Barber comes back within like the first month of the year.
Yeah, I have no problems with the receiver room though. I will say though, like for people that are confident, like that they know who's going to start on this offensive line and that it's going to be exceptionally good or exceedingly bad, like I have no idea. It's like when I think ahead to like fall camp, right? And because I'm right now thinking I'm like, okay, when fall camp rolls around, like what am I looking for? Because we saw what we saw in the spring, right? And the limited media access that we had, but it was like, what are we looking to see in the fall, right? And to me, like the offensive line, as for a lot of people, is the biggest question here. But is it like what are we going to see that much in the fall? Like, or are we going to have to wait to the games to really see like if this offensive line can figure itself out?
So I think all we'll get from the glimpses, I think y'all get like what, the first 15 or 20 minutes of practice, like outside of stretching, or does that include stretching?
It includes stretching, but it's not like obviously it's spring, so they don't show much anyways.
Right. No, I'm talking like fall. I'm talking fall.
Oh, fall. Yeah,
It'll be the same. It'll be the same thing, right?
Yeah, it'll be similar. I mean, I'm sure there'll be more individual drills, but
Right.
and
Well,
it's a new era, right? New coaching staff. You
yeah.
don't know what you're gonna get, what you're not gonna get, but
Right. And like programs like Arkansas, we're just letting media members stay for the entire practice, which is crazy. But anyway,
wild.
yeah,
Wild.
that's so crazy. That's so crazy. We wouldn't do that. But I think what we could look for in fall, maybe you can get something from what they're fielding out there on air, maybe just the units they're throwing out there. I think you can always look at that, and it's never exactly that, but I think you can get an understanding. Maybe maybe 3 or 4 guys there are guys that are confident in starting. But to me, when I look at the O line, I think you have a lot of players that you'd feel good about giving a chance at a job, right? I think left tackle is pretty solidified. I don't know if you necessarily have a backup left tackle right now, which is, I guess, a question mark, unless Crownover or Father can go both ways. But aside from that, I think you have 3 guards you're happy with. I think right now, with Fowie coming into the program, you have 2 centers you're probably happy with if you count Fowie and Naboo. And obviously, Naboo can play either guard. I think the guards, you have plenty of options there. I think Dewberry is in for a big year. I heard from Carter Carrolls that he was injured throughout most of the year last year, and maybe that's why we saw some regression. I don't know if you can add any insight to that, but you also have Armaj Reed Adams, who drew praises and looked good in the spring game. At right tackle, that's where I have my most question as far as personnel goes. It's Fathery coming back, resurgence. I don't know if it was injury last year. I really don't know what the deal with Fathery is. I've been calling him an enigma. Big X factor on the offense, in my opinion, because Crownover has proven to be inconsistent, changing positions from tight end to right tackle. But I feel like I feel good about the 8 or 9 guys I just mentioned. I feel like those 9 guys give you a good chance to shave this thing down to a solid 5 with potentially, I think, guaranteed better coaching and better training staff. I think that bodes well. But to say you know who that 5 is, you can't say that right now. There are options there, which is a good thing.
yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'm happy with the number of pieces, like in terms of like depth, but at the same time, like you look at like a team like LSU, and it's like you're like, okay, they probably have one of, if not the best offensive lines in the SEC, maybe the country, right? But their 2s and 3s are pretty terrible. Not gonna lie. I mean, or inexperienced actually is probably the right word to use.
Right, but
doesn't seem bad, but I don't know. I like a good team with depth because I'm like, all right, if these things, the rails won't come from underneath them, right? If they have some solid pieces in depth, and I hope we have that. Is what I'm saying. I hope we have that.
well, I mean, I just gave you 9 guys, and those are all guys that have played before. I mean, all those guys have at least a full season of starting experience under their belt. I mean, maybe Crownover's been in and out, not starting, but he's played a lot. I think you have a 2 deep of experience here, maybe not counting the left tackle position. I think that's a lot more than a lot of programs can say.
Yeah, that just tells you how premium offensive line is, dude, in the transfer portal.
I know, and people are saying, I've heard, I mean, I've probably said it too, but it'd be nice if we get a tackle out of the transfer portal. Yeah, you and everybody else are saying that.
Good luck with that.
Good luck. You're gonna get you're gonna get pennies on the dollar there if you try to pull a tackle out of the portal, unless you're day one dropping bags, day one competitive market. So anyway, I would somewhat oppose what you just said there. I do think A&M has a 2 deep at the O line. I think so, and I don't. The thing is, they've been bad, so you might have a 2 deep of bad O linemen. We don't know yet. We don't know if coaching will just be the cure all. But I know we have 2 deep of experience, and I didn't even mention Aggie, who's been out, and I don't know, he's been up and down, mostly down in his career, unfortunately.
Yeah, I don't know if is he going to be back. I don't think he's.
He was listed as injured in spring.
Yeah,
maybe.
I don't have super insider information, but I don't know how healthy he's going to be for the season.
Right. If
I'm
not banking on him, just another name to throw out that's played. But yeah, if we have 9, did I mention 9 guys? The starting 5.
Trey, Armand Reed, Mark Naboo, Cam Dewberry, Basantis, Crownover, Hunter, Shanahan.
Yeah, and Shanahan looked good. Shanahan looked good to me in the spring game as a backup center.
Yeah.
I didn't even mention him.
So I can see 9 names. I can see 9 names. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. And of course they have to build that thing. I think Yeah, the only one I can say confidently is starting is Zune. But besides that, they have their choice there. They have their pick there, and yeah, Basantis looked a lot better at left guard than right tackle. I thought in one tiny minuscule sample size, but who knows?
Yeah, and I'm trying to think too. Like, I don't know how many offensive lines like you could really say right now at this point, May 23rd, are better than this, right? Like, I mean, LSU, probably Texas, actually definitely Texas. Sorry,
Yeah,
sorry,
we have to give
and
it to them. They have that. I think Texas. Just to go on a tangent, because I just did a video about Texas. I think Texas, their strength of their offense is the O line. Now they have some work to
oh
do, I think, at receiver, and you got to keep Quinn healthy. That's been an issue for a couple years, but there's no question their O line is top two, top
yeah,
three in the country.
I mean, you're looking at and guys with experience too that are good, and you got like
Yeah,
gigantic human DJ Campbell. Like what? Talk
yeah,
about a massive blob of human. Jake
yeah.
Major, Aiden Connor. I mean, Kelvin Banks. I mean, it's pretty loaded there, you
It's
know.
crazy.
And they also got some guys too, like Cole Hudson, who's gotten some time too. Like he's a second guy probably this year if you look at
Yeah,
it. Yeah,
yeah.
they're pretty solid in the
They
offense.
were a top three. I would probably at least top five offensive line last year, and 4 out of 5 are back this year. So yeah,
Yeah, and the guy that you're losing, as good as Christian Jones was, I mean, I think they'll be fine.
yeah, they're
they'll
gonna be fine. It's gonna be their strength, and the whole thing. After talking to Texas people and scouting them with Ewers, is he doesn't have that attribute of like gunslinger with pressure, and you have a great O line in front of you. That kind of mitigates the problem. So we'll have to see how the receivers pick everything up. I was never big on Nyblack. I was not that big on Bond. They never impressed me. I've heard some coaches talk
really.
negatively about Nyblack. I don't know. We'll have to see what happens there. Sark can do a lot of things, but off the
Yeah, I
Texas
mean,
talk anyway.
I feel like Amari Nyblack. It's not like he doesn't. He does a couple things well, right? I mean, like he's gonna be an athlete in space, but catching the ball, I guess, route running, he's got speed. I mean, other than that, though, I'm not sure he's everything you want in a tight end. Like they might use him more. Like if I'm a uh, Steve Sarkisian, he'll probably do what he did with Jaleel Billingsley back in the day, and like just put him in the slot sometimes.
Oh yeah,
Back when he was at Bama. I mean, not the
right.
brutality that was when he was at Texas, but
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and I'm with you. The receiver room obviously is worse. I happen to like Isaiah Bond. I like Matthew Golden. We'll
No, I like
see.
Matthew Golden, and I think Wingo is gonna be their best receiver by the end of the year. Though that dude
Really?
impressed. I think so, dude. That guy. I've only seen film and a spring game, but he looks different to me. It's just my take. I think he's going to be their best receiver by the end of the year. Maybe not early, but I think he starts for them, or he's in the two deep and he's playing in like the third drive, and then he
Okay.
works his way into it more as the year goes on. Maybe that's a hot take.
Those St. Louis receivers. I mean, Luther Burden. I mean, different schools, right? But I mean,
Right.
but and I don't know. I mean, what do you? Yeah, not to go on that Texas tangent there.
Well, we play them, so you know what? We're scouting the opponent now. So yeah, I don't feel as bad about it. I don't feel as bad about it. It's in state. It's front and center for us. So I'm doing a series this offseason, doing a video per big game. So I still have to do LSU. I'm gonna do Florida and Auburn because they're big road tests. I'm gonna do Missouri. So still got all those to do, and I just did Texas, so it's all top of mind for me. But
Yeah.
anywho, back to A&M. Back to A&M. In watching the film, I admit I forgot a little bit about Amari Daniels. He's serviceable. He's not bad. He just I think he needs sounder O line play to be at his best. But once he gets downhill, he can rail off some yards and chunks. I mean, we've seen it before. The fumbles are top of mind last year, obviously. But I keep talking about this offense as would potentially have a dynamic duo of running backs. But with EJ Smith and Amari Daniels, I don't know. We might see a committee again, and I think that's a good thing. What do you think about Amari?
Yeah, I like him a lot. It's he offers something. What's nice about all of these guys is I think that they offer a little bit something different each of them. And what CD always says, my brother, if for the viewers that don't know who he is, but he always says as a Minnesota fan, right? He's like, oh, have a pair and a spare, right?
Yeah.
Have your pair, right, with Owens and Moss, right? Have your pair, and then have a spare, man. Like you never know. Like there's
Oh yeah.
like you just never know what's going to happen in the running back room. And my brother always likes to use the example of Minnesota, right? I mean, last year they converted a walk-on safety to play running back. Jordan Newman. I mean, Utah had the same situation too,
Yeah.
and he's freaking playing the NFL. Have a pair and a spare, right? Have a plan. And
Yep.
I think having Amari Daniels there as that plan, it's a nice security blanket. Having that depth in the running back room, and I think running back isn't necessarily like a luxury position. You can find a lot of good ones in the transfer portal. Like
Yeah, sure.
Throw a stone and you're probably going to get someone pretty decent. But it is nice having Amari Daniels, like just a veteran, that knows what he's doing. He's shown explosiveness at times. He's a pretty good football player, man. And as exciting as Ruben Owens is and Le'Veon Moss, like we'll get to see some of him for sure this year. And it's just nice. I know I mentioned in the comments the running back room and how it stacks up to the SEC, the rest of the SEC. Like it's a really good running back room, man.
Yeah.
Like it's a really good running back room, and I think that kind of gets lost in the sauce because like you look last year, you're like, oh, the yards per carry, Le'Veon Moss, they weren't even at 4 yards, whatever. Like I don't know, man. In terms of like pure talents, I'd say that this is one of the better running back rooms in the SEC. So I did agree with your analysis on that one.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the other top rooms. I think you put Texas up there. I think they have some young guys we're really excited about.
I'd put Georgia on there. Those guys.
Yeah.
Those running backs, they like to burn a lot of speed there. You know what I mean?
Yep. But beyond that, nothing sticks out. I don't know. I think
Alabama, I like what they have there. I mean, I like Haynes. But I mean, Ole Miss, Logan Diggs and Ulysses, whatever his name is.
Bennett, yeah.
Pretty solid. I mean, South Carolina just got Raheem Sanders, so it's like, how much is that, going to factor into things? I don't know. I mean, CJ Baxter, I think, is really, really freaking good. And Jaden Blue is also really good. So,
yeah,
I think, Texas got a good running back room. I think Gavin Sawchuk for Oklahoma is pretty solid as well. But in terms of like the depth, like the pure depth of this running back room is kind of insane.
It really is.
I would say Georgia's running back room is probably deeper. I'd be honest. It's probably deeper, right? I mean, you got the Robinsons and you got Trevor Etienne. But I mean,
yeah.
So I don't know. We'll see how that running back room turns out. Again, it's like we talked about, the biggest question is the offensive line, but at the same time, like your run game can also be schemed a little bit too. And Colin Klein has had success with a plethora of different offensive lines, a plethora of different running backs and running styles of running backs. So
yeah,
it'll be interesting to see what he concocts with this offensive line unit and this room running backs.
Yep. Probably going to see less zone running like we did before, more power, more pin and pull, stuff like that, more alignment in space. So it'll be a different look for sure. So we'll see what happens, man. Any closing thoughts on the offense? Any other areas you want to touch before I get you out of here for the night?
I mean, let's just stay hopeful, man. Let's just stay healthy and stay hopeful.
Yeah. I really want to see Donovan Green back in full form. He was such a weapon, such a safety valve, just a good tight end, man. Good tight end as a freshman.
Dude, like, he's such a good guy, man. Like,
I call him the good Aggie, dude. I call him the good Aggie. Donovan Green, the good Aggie.
When he comes to studio for interviews, he's so well spoken, man. Like, faith, like number one on his mind. He's a good leader. Like, just he brings optimism, like a level of optimism and leadership, and goodness to him that I think is lost a little bit today sometimes. So just shout out Donovan Green for just being an absolutely stellar human being, if people didn't already know that.
Love to hear it. Well, all right, man. I appreciate the call, and once again, follow this guy at the Redshirt Sophomore. That's it, right? At Redshirt Sophomore?
Yep, you got it. Thank you.
All right. Want more info, go follow him. He has a lot of good stuff. All right, Matthew, I appreciate it, man. Thanks for calling in.
Absolutely. See you, man.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and get to the last caller. It's getting late, but Theo's been waiting. Theo, you're on with Drew. It's good to hear from you, man. How you doing?
Bro, I'm tired.
You've been waiting for a while, man.
I kept kicking me out.
I know, I saw. I was going to wait until you stabilized, and it looks like you have not been kicked out for like 10 minutes, so we're looking good right now.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
What do you want to touch on? I'll give you the floor. I know we've talked about a lot of different things tonight. If you want to add to the offense, do that. You want to talk lawsuit and all that crap, whatever you want to talk about.
so I think we'll start with the whole lawsuit situation stuff. I think we're going to end up with a major league type system. I can't tell you how many schools are going to be involved in it. I can't tell you how many teams are going to be in the playoff system in it. I can't tell you how it's broken down and what regions or anything about that yet.
Right.
But it just feels like that's where this is all going. Is eventually the student athletes are no longer going to be students. They're just going to be athletes of the school. Um, it would be interesting to see if they're still going to have scholarships or if we go to a situation more like um, the D3 or the Ivy League level where it's strictly, NIL based. Um, I can't tell you any of that, and we're in for a wild ride for the next, I don't know, 10, 15 years until it stables off.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
it's just going to be interesting. Um, is it just going to turn into like the USFL, except it's going to be tied to universities? Like universities are going to be the sponsors, quote unquote, sponsors of teams,
They'll be the
and
employers
they
of the players.
right. It's just going to be really weird as it goes. And um, just looking back on my lifetime of watching football, what I see today is completely different than what I grew up on.
Sure.
Um, I still remember the whole worry about the arms race for facilities. And now it's no longer just facilities, but it's also money to pay players. Um, and it's crazy. Um, I still kind of miss the old days, like quote unquote old days,
Right.
where um, it didn't really feel like there was as many haves as have-nots. I mean, just go back to the greatest year ever, according to Josh Pate in what, 06, 07, when they had something like 23 upsets in a 3-week period.
Right. In the
Um,
top five by like week 10 included like Boston College, Kansas, and Missouri.
Kansas, Missouri, West Virginia, and Pitt were all like top 5 teams,
South Florida.
and South Florida was up there. So, um, and back then, it felt like everyone had a shot at it, even though you quote unquote knew who had it. Um, there wasn't so much of a disparity worry there.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah,
Yeah, man.
that
It's gonna
that's
change.
out the window.
I honestly, I'm ready for whatever. I'm glad A&M is positioned well to excel in whatever happens in the future. I think we have a very savvy businessman at the helm of the athletic department right now in Trev Alberts. I think there's unity in the athletic department with the university. I think with the boosters and the NIL situation, I think we have a lot of unity. So I think we're well established to thrive in whatever the future of college football is. And let me ask you this before we get off of this subject. Through all this change, through everything that might change, does it diminish your enjoyment when you're sitting down watching a game and you're in the middle of the third quarter?
I don't know yet. I'll have to see how it goes.
It's a very precious sport to us, man. I mean, we're here
Um,
talking late on a Thursday night about this sport in the dead of the off season. We're obviously very invested in this sport, so you change too much, man, it could hurt a little bit. I feel optimistic about me not being affected in that regard, but we'll have to wait and see.
I mean, my fandom for college football is different than my fandom for NFL football. So, in terms of that aspect, I may become more of a fan of, say, A&M the school than the players,
Wow.
like I do in the NFL. In the NFL, it's more I'm a fan of the Cowboys, but not so much of the players because I know the players are going to come and go.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas my college fandom was more of a support of the players because the players made the school. You know what I mean?
Right. Right. Yeah, that's a fair point, especially if they become employees officially. And right now, there's still the revolving door with transfer portal and everything. So I think there are still some good ones out there now, though, but that may diminish as the structure changes.
Hmm.
Anyway, any closing thoughts on the reformation side of things? Or are you ready to get into actual A&M?
I'm good with actual A&M. I was just gonna say there's not much that I could add to that.
We've had some good callers
The
tonight,
only
haven't we?
Yes, yes, and they've hit a lot of details that I was gonna hit anyways. So now I kind of have no words to say. Um,
Yeah.
the only thing I really got to say is um, I really love the way Colin Kine adapts his offense throughout his tenure at Kansas State, and I look forward to how he can adapt his offense with what he has here at A&M.
Right.
Um, it's more of an intrigue of what the next step in coaching is and what Cushing can do with the offensive line. And um, I know a lot of people think Levon or Owens is going to be the best back, but I'm really stuck still behind Amari. Um, I feel like Amari Daniels is the best all around back we have.
Wow.
I think Levon is the best power back. I think Owens is probably the best um, home run threat slash
Yeah.
pass catcher.
Great way to put
You
it.
know, with EJ Smith. Um, but I think Amari Daniels has the best mixture of everything of being able to see the hole, set up his blocks, um, and also be able to cut in the hole, not just and just be all the best all around back. He kind of reminds me of Josh Corbin, if you remember Corbin.
Jay Sean Corbin?
Um, yes.
Yeah, yeah. Transferred to FSU, came with Jimbo. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I remember him.
Hmm.
Yeah, he was
Reminds me of
solid.
Corbin a lot. So I think Daniels is going to be more of that steady, you know, 10 to 15 yard guy, with Moss going to be more of the goal line back, and then um, Owens is going to get his touches, and he's going to be more of like your screen guy, your
Right.
um, motion guy, that person who can get it up the field quickly and fast.
Right. I think I'm still looking at Le'Veon as the most quality back, but you could be right. But I think regardless, I think Amari Daniels is going to have several y'all must have forgot moments next year. I think he's the
Oh
unsung
yeah.
guy that is going to be an impact player next year. Regardless of where he falls in line, he's going to play. And I don't think I feel bad for not mentioning him enough in my previous evaluations. He's a player for this offense, very experienced. He brings a lot to the table. And it's the SEC. He may end up needing to be the guy, even if he's not the guy at some point in the year. So, yeah, absolutely.
He's also very slithery. He picks up a lot of dirty yards by twisting and turning and still somehow keeping his feet for 2 or 3 yards after contact. I don't know if you noticed that last year, but there was a lot of times when it was, second and short, third and short, sometimes even third and four, and he would get five after being hit 2 yards.
Right.
Um, and just because he would twist and turn and slither and slide through spots that weren't necessarily there, but he just would not stop.
Right. And all of our, keep this in mind, and we've kind of hinted at this throughout, but all of our evaluations were with pretty subpar O line play at times. So
Hmm.
if that aspect takes a step forward, everything else takes a step forward. So that's always there, and that's obviously the big hopium, the big hope going into next year's improved O line play. Here's one aspect we haven't talked about, Theo, that I think you could touch on. Any freshman impact players you see emerging for this offense next year?
Many of you've talked a lot about this. I think the actual kid from Refugio
Ernest Campbell.
might actually be Ernest Campbell. I think he's going to be one of those sneaky impact players that we don't think about. And I think he may get, 20 receptions and 10 carries as a freshman, which
Yeah.
sounds like it's not going to be a whole lot of. But I think of those receptions and carries, you're going to look at something like 10 and 20 yards a pop. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. They'll use him for certain setup plays. I think if you're lacking, I said this a second ago, maybe Ruben Owens is this, but besides
Theo, you
that,
there?
yeah, can you hear me? Oh, Theo, I think you lost connection. You were cutting in and out. Uh-oh. It's happening. We're losing Theo again. All right, Theo, I'm going to kick you out, bring you back in. If that doesn't help, I'm going to have to end the show. Because remember last time we didn't get you back. Theo, you there? I think we lost Theo. All right. I'll give Theo one more chance while I end the show. Guys, y'all 15 that are watching right now, y'all are real ones. It is late. We had technical difficulties at the beginning of the stream. I don't know. Anybody still in the chat? If you're still in the chat, say goodnight to everybody because we're about to end the show. Y'all are awesome for sticking around. Good show, guys. Great callers tonight. Everybody that called in, y'all did great. Starting with Max with the lawsuit, going to Chris, going to Matthew, going to everybody. And then obviously Theo here always offers good insight, but I think he's crashed. Noble guy, good night, man. Kai, I think Marcel will be the GOAT Tamu quarterback. Whoa. Look, man, this guy has tools. Who knows what he can become? We'll bookmark that. If you're right, you win the big prize. It's possible though. He's super good. He looks really promising. But guys, we're ending the show there. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one, guys. Gig 'em.